You ever wonder how some businesses just seem to, well, know what's coming? Like our fictional company, Gadget Central. Somehow they're already stocking up on next year's tech, or they know exactly how many support staff they need for the holidays. Is it like magic
Hmm.
or something else?
Yeah, it definitely seems like a crystal ball sometimes, doesn't it?
Totally. So today we're taking a deep dive into exactly that, the art and maybe the science of demand forecasting. We're using the OpEx SCM Funda2 Forecasting document by Vishnu Rayapeddi as our guide.
And our mission really is to pull out the key ideas, help you understand what's behind some of the really critical decisions businesses make.
Get ready to uncover the secrets behind what the document calls educated guessing. We'll look at different types, different methods, and importantly, how companies even know if their guesses are any good.
It should give you a great shortcut to understanding a really vital business function.
So let's unpack this then. Forecasting. The document says it's basically educated guessing, or the process of predicting a future event. Sounds simple enough, but what makes it educated and why is it so important?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? This educated guessing isn't just, optional. It's really the underlying basis of all business decisions. Think about your Gadget Central example again.
Okay.
How do they decide production schedules, inventory levels, how many people to hire? Even those huge long-term plays like building a new warehouse or investing in a whole new product line, it all hangs on these forecasts.
Right. To get it wrong and you're either drowning in stuff you can't sell
Or we're
or...
missing out big time because you don't have enough.
Exactly.
It affects everything. Production, inventory, staffing, even facility planning.
Okay, that makes sense. So if you're talking about these massive decisions like building a factory, how far out can these educated guesses actually, stretch?
Good question. The document breaks it down by time horizon, basically how far into the future you're looking. And that really changes what you use the forecast for.
Right.
So first, you've got the short-range forecast. That's up to a year, but usually it's much shorter, like less than 3 months. Think immediate stuff.
Like next week's schedule.
Exactly. Job scheduling, worker assignments, really operational day-to-day decisions for Gadget Central.
Okay, tactical stuff. Got it. What's next?
Then you've got the medium-range forecast. That's looking out, say, 3 months to 3 years. This is where you get into sales and production planning or setting the annual budgets.
So planning the next quarter's marketing, maybe?
Do
Or
you?
how many tablets to make?
Precisely. And then there's the long-range forecast. That's 3 years or more out. These are for the really big picture items. New product planning, deciding where to build that new facility you mentioned.
And what's really key here, I guess, is the difference between short and long term. It's not just the time, is it?
No, not at all. The medium and long-range forecasts, they tackle more comprehensive issues. They're the ones that support management decisions regarding planning and products, plants, and processes. Big strategic calls.
Right. You wouldn't build a factory based on next week's prediction.
Exactly. And the document also points out something pretty intuitive. Short-term forecasts tend to be more accurate than longer-term forecasts.
Makes sense. More known variables closer in.
Yeah, and because of that, they often use different methods, different techniques entirely. You have more solid data for the short term, usually. Long term, you're looking at broader trends, bigger assumptions.
Okay, now here's something I found really interesting. How a product's journey, its life cycle from introduction to growth, maturity, and finally decline, how that massively impacts forecasting.
Oh, absolutely.
The source says stages of introduction and growth require longer forecasts than maturity and decline, which honestly felt a bit backwards at first. Wouldn't you need long forecasts for phasing something out?
Yeah, that's a great point, and it really gets at the strategy behind the forecast. Think about the introduction and growth stages. There's often a ton of uncertainty.
Sure.
Yeah.
Will this new gadget even sell?
Exactly. Like Gadget Central's new smart speaker. You need those longer forecasts to plan your big investments, product design, setting up manufacturing, marketing, even though you don't have much history. The document mentions things like frequent product and process design changes and high production costs are common here.
So it's about planning for potential, not just repeating the past.
Precisely. But then you hit maturity. Think of a standard smartphone model that's been around a while. The market's kind of saturated. Product changes are less rapid. The big focus shifts to cost minimization.
Keep things efficient.
Right. Forecasting here is more about stability, maybe small tweaks. You might even see overcapacity in the industry, like the document mentions for things like station wagons or fax machines back in the day. For Gadget Central, maybe it's forecasting demand for their older, reliable laptops.
And then decline.
Decline. Like those old 3.5-inch floppy disks. The strategy's totally different. It's about pruning the line, getting rid of stuff that isn't profitable, reducing capacity. Forecasting helps you manage that exit gracefully, so you don't end up with warehouses full of obsolete tech.
Wow. So the purpose of the forecast really changes depending on where the product is.
Completely. It's tied directly to the business strategy for that product at that time.
Okay, so demand forecasting predicting sales is obviously huge. But the document also touches on other types of forecasts businesses need. It's not just about product sales, right?
Not at all. Companies need to look broader. There are economic forecasts. These look at the whole business cycle stuff, like inflation rate, money supply, general economic health.
Because the people have less money.
Exactly. It impacts Gadget Central sales no matter how cool their new product is. Then you have technological forecasts. These try to predict the rate of technological progress, how quickly new tech like AI or VR might develop and, crucially, gain acceptance.
So Gadget Central needs to guess if they should bet big on VR headsets next year.
Pretty much. It helps them decide where to put their R&D money, what big bets to make down the line. It's about understanding the whole environment.
Okay, so it's complex. But the source actually gives a really clear roadmap, like a checklist. It lists 7 steps in forecasting. Can you walk us through those?
Yeah, it's a useful framework. Step 1. Determine the use of the forecast. Why are you doing this? Staffing. New factory. That changes everything.
Okay, makes sense.
2. Select the items to be forecasted. Are you looking at total company sales or one specific model or maybe even just a component part?
Be specific.
3. Determine the time horizon. Short, medium, long range that we just talked about. 4. Select the forecasting model. This is choosing your tools, qualitative, quantitative, which specific technique.
Right.
5. Gather the data.
3.
Crucial step. What information do you actually have to work with? Historical sales, market research, economic indicators. 6. Make the forecast. Run the numbers. Gather the opinion.
To the thing.
Yeah. Execute the plan. And finally, 7. Validate and implement results. Check your work and use it.
That last one, validate and implement results, feels really important. Maybe easily skipped.
Oh, it's hugely important. And yes, often overlooked. People sometimes make the forecast and then just move on.
Right, like the job's done.
But effective forecasting is a cycle. Validation means asking. Okay, we predicted 1,000 sales for Gadget Central, but only 500 people bought it. Why? Was the model flawed? Was the data bad? Did something unexpected happen in the market?
So you learn from the errors.
Exactly. You use that feedback to refine your models, maybe improve how you gather data, and hopefully make a better guess next time. Without validation, you're just guessing blindly again and again.
Which brings us nicely to the realities of forecasting. It sounds very scientific with these steps and models, but how good are these predictions really?
Yeah, connecting it back, the source is very clear. Forecasts are seldom perfect. It's not about being 100% right. It's about reducing uncertainty and making better decisions than you would without any forecast at all.
Managing expectations.
And it also notes, crucially, that most forecasting methods assume that there is some underlying stability in the system. If things are totally chaotic, your traditional models might break down.
That's a big assumption, especially these days.
It is. It means you also need to be agile, ready to adapt when the forecast is inevitably wrong sometimes.
And here's another reality check the document mentions. Both product family and aggregated product forecasts are more accurate than individual product forecasts. So predicting total smart device sales for Gadget Central is easier than predicting sales of just the blue ones.
Yeah, generally speaking, it's like the law of large numbers and statistics. When you group things together, the random errors, the little up and down fluctuations for individual items, they tend to cancel each other out somewhat.
Okay, so the overall picture is clearer than the tiny details.
Right. Predicting the overall flow of traffic is easier than predicting exactly where one specific car will turn.
Got it. So how do companies actually do this? We've mentioned models. The document breaks it down into 2 main approaches: quantitative methods and qualitative methods. What's the difference?
It really boils down to the situation and, crucially, the data you have. Quantitative methods are your math-based approaches. You use these when the situation is relatively stable, and importantly, you have historical data.
Like forecasting sales for Gadget Central's standard power banks they've sold for years.
Exactly. You have past sales figures, so you can use mathematical techniques to spot patterns and project them forward.
And qualitative.
Qualitative methods come in when the situation is vague and you have little data. Think about that brand new revolutionary smart speaker Gadget Central is launching.
No history for that specific thing.
Right, so you can't just run the historical numbers. You have to rely more on intuition, experience, expert judgment, market research, more subjective inputs.
Okay, let's dig into those qualitative ones first, the human touch methods. The source lists 4.
Yep. First is the jury of executive opinion. Basically, you get a bunch of high-level managers in a room, pool their collective wisdom and experience, and come up with a forecast.
Quick, but maybe biased.
It's relatively quick, yeah. But the big disadvantage is potential groupthink, you know? The most senior person or the loudest voice might dominate, and you don't get truly independent views.
Okay, method 2.
The Delphi method. This tries to address that groupthink problem. It's an iterative group process. You've got decision makers, staff, maybe outside experts, but they provide input anonymously, often through questionnaires.
Anonymously, how does that work?
Well, a facilitator gathers the anonymous responses, summarizes them, feeds that summary back to the group, and asks for another round of input. You repeat this a few times. The idea is to reach a consensus through structured, anonymous feedback, reducing groupthink.
Slower, but maybe more robust opinions.
Generally, yes. Takes more time and effort, but can yield better results if group dynamics are a concern.
Okay, third.
Salesforce composite. This one makes intuitive sense. You ask your salespeople for their estimates, usually territory by territory, and then aggregate them.
Because they're closest to the customers.
Exactly. They know customers' wants, they have their ear to the ground. Huge advantage. The potential downside, the document flags. Sales estimates tend to be overly optimistic.
I can see that. Always aiming high.
It's in their nature, perhaps, so you might need to adjust those estimates downward sometimes.
And the last qualitative one.
The consumer market survey. Go straight to the source. Ask the customer about purchasing plans. Gadget Central could survey people asking, are you likely to buy our new smart speaker in the next 6 months?
Seems direct. What's the catch?
The catch is what consumers say and what they actually do are often different. People might intend to buy something or say they will in a survey, but then life happens, budgets change, a competitor comes out with something shinier.
Intent doesn't always equal purchase.
Precisely. So survey data is useful input, but you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Okay, let's switch gears to the quantitative side, using the data. We'll start with time series forecasting. The idea here is using past data points, evenly spaced numerical data, to predict the future, right? Assuming the past patterns continue.
That's the core assumption, yes. You're looking only on past values of the thing you're trying to forecast, assuming the underlying factors remain somewhat stable.
So what patterns are we actually looking for in that historical data? The document mentions 4 components.
Right, 4 key time series components. First is the trend component. This is the persistent overall upward or downward pattern over the long haul, several years duration. Think Gadget Central, seeing overall growth in the wearables market year after year, driven by big things like population changes, technology shifts.
The big slope up or down.
Exactly. Then you've got the seasonal component. This is your regular pattern of up and down fluctuations that happens within 1 year. Predictable cycles.
Like holiday sales spokes for Gadget Central.
Perfect example. Or maybe lower sales in the summer when people travel. It's driven by weather, customs, holidays, things that repeat annually. Third is the cyclical component. These are also repeating up and down movement, but they usually last longer than a year, maybe 10 years duration, often tied to broader economic factors.
Like a recession hitting electronic sales every few years.
Exactly. It's a longer wave than the seasonal pattern. And finally, there's the leftover bit.
The unpredictable stuff.
The random component. This is the erratic, unsystematic residual fluctuations, stuff that doesn't fit the trend, seasonal or cyclical patterns. It's due to random variation or unforeseen events, a sudden competitor promotion, a union strike, a tornado disrupting logistics, the noise in the data.
Okay, trend, seasonal, cyclical, and random noise. Got it. So with those in mind, what are some specific methods? The document starts with the simplest. The naive approach.
Yeah, it sounds almost too simple, but it can be surprisingly useful. The naive approach just assumes that demand in next period is the same as demand in most recent period.
So if Gadget Central sold 48 widgets last month, they forecast 48 for next month.
Exactly. The document notes it's cost-effective and efficient. Super easy to calculate. The obvious limitation is it completely ignores any trends, seasonality, or anything else. It only works if demand is really stable.
Okay. What's a step up from that? Moving average method, MA.
Right. The moving average smooths things out a bit. You take the average demand over a specific number of past periods, say, the last 3 months. It's used if little or no trend is present.
Helps average out the random blips.
It does, but it has downsides. The document points out that if you average over more periods, increasing n, your forecast becomes less sensitive to changes. It also does not forecast trend well, and you require much historical data to calculate it.
So maybe not great if things are clearly trending up or down.
Correct. For that, you might use the weighted moving average method, WMA. This is used when trend is present because it lets you put more weight on the more recent data points, assuming they're more relevant for the future.
So last month's sales might count more than sales from 6 months ago?
Exactly. Those weights typically sum to 1.0, letting you emphasize the recent past.
Okay, and then there's one that sounds even more common, exponential smoothing.
Yes, exponential smoothing is very popular and widely used. It's like a sophisticated weighted moving average. The key idea is that the weights decline exponentially as data gets older. So the most recent data is weighted most, and the impact of older data fades very quickly.
How does it decide the weights?
It uses a parameter called the smoothing constant, usually represented by alpha, which is a number between 0 and 1. You choose alpha based on how much weight you want to give the most recent observation versus the previous forecast. A big advantage is that it involves little record keeping of past data compared to moving averages. You basically just need the last actual demand figure and the last forecast.
So it's efficient computationally.
Very much so. That's one reason it's so common.
Now, these time series methods are all about looking at past values of the same thing. But the document also mentions associative models, like linear regression. How are they different?
Associative models try to find a relationship, an association, between the thing you want to forecast, the dependent variable y, and one or more other factors, the explanatory variables x that you believe influence it. Crucially, these x variables are not just time.
So instead of predicting Gadget Central sales based only on past sales, you predict sales based on what?
Maybe based on how much Gadget Central spends on advertising X, or maybe based on competitors' prices, another X. Linear regression specifically finds the best straight-line relationship between Y and X.
Okay.
It calculates 2 key things. The slope, B, which tells you how much Y changes, on average, for every 1 unit increase in X.
So for every extra $1,000 in advertising, sales go up by, say, 50 units.
Exactly. And it calculates the Y-intercept A, which is the average value of Y when X is 0.
And how do we know if that relationship is actually strong or just random?
Good question. That's where correlation comes in. The model calculates correlation R, a value between 1=1 and +1 that measures the strength and direction of the linear relationship. Closer to +1 or -1 means a stronger linear link.
And R squared, I hear that term a lot.
Right. R squared R is really important. It tells you the percent of variation in Y that is explained by the regression model, specifically by the changes in X. So if Gadget Central finds an R squared of 0.75 between advertising spend and sales,
it means 75% of the ups and downs in their sales can be statistically linked to their advertising changes.
Precisely. It gives you a measure of how well your explanatory variable actually predicts the outcome. A higher R squared generally means a better predictive model, assuming the relationship makes logical sense.
Okay, so we've made our forecasts using one of these methods, maybe qualitative, maybe quantitative. Now, back to validation. How do we actually measure if the forecasts were any good?
Yeah, how do we score our educated guesses? The goal, as the source says, is ideally no pattern or direction in forecast error. You don't want to be consistently high or low, and you want the smallest forecast error overall.
So how we measure that error?
There are a few standard metrics. Mean square error, MSE, squares each error before averaging, so it heavily penalizes large misses. Mean absolute deviation, MAD, just averages the absolute value of the errors, how far off you were on average, ignoring whether you were high or low.
Okay, MAD sounds pretty intuitive. Average missed distance.
It is. And then there's mean absolute percent error, MAPE. This calculates the error as a percentage of the actual demand. That's useful because it lets you compare forecast accuracy across different items, maybe a high-volume, cheap item versus a low-volume, expensive one. A 10-unit error means something different if you normally sell 20 versus if you normally sell 10,000.
Right, percentage makes it comparable.
Exactly. And then there's one more tool for monitoring over time.
The tracking signal, TS. What's special about that one?
Ah, the tracking signal. What's fascinating here is how it helps you see if your forecast is becoming biased over time. It's calculated as the ratio of the running sum of forecast errors, RSFE, to mean absolute deviation, MAD.
Okay, break that down. Running sum of forecast errors.
RSFE is simple. You just keep adding up the errors from each period. If your forecast is consistently too low, the errors are positive and RSFE keeps getting bigger. If you're consistently too high, the errors are negative and RSFE gets more and more negative.
And you divide that by MAD, the average error size.
Right. So the tracking signal basically tells you, is the cumulative error getting really big compared to the typical size of our errors? A good tracking signal has low values. It should be within upper and lower control limits, usually something like plus or minus 3 or 4.
So if it drifts outside those limits.
It's a warning sign. It signals that your forecast might be systematically biased, consistently over or under predicting, and you need to investigate why. Maybe the market changed, maybe your model is no longer appropriate. It's like an early warning system for your forecasting process.
That seems incredibly useful for keeping things on track. Now, we've talked a lot about products, factories, Gadget Central, but forecasting isn't just for physical goods, right? What about services?
Absolutely critical for services too, but the document highlights some unusual challenges there.
Like what?
Well, often there's a special need for short-term records. Demand for services can fluctuate really quickly, sometimes hour by hour. Think about call centers, restaurants, emergency rooms.
The fast food restaurant example, forecasting sales by the hour.
Exactly. You need that granularity. Also, differ greatly as a function of industry and product, even within services. Forecasting for a consultancy is very different from forecasting for an airline.
And holidays.
Big time. Issues of holidays and calendar can have a huge immediate impact. Think about Gadget Central's tech support lines right after a major holiday when everyone's trying to set up their new gifts. Controlled chaos, hopefully, if the forecast was decent. And finally, unusual events. A local festival, a power outage, can create sudden, sharp spikes or dips in demand for services that are harder to predict than for physical goods that might have inventory buffers.
It really highlights the need for flexibility and maybe different approaches in the service sector.
Definitely. More emphasis often on very short-term forecasting and reacting quickly.
Wow, okay. So we've really covered a lot of ground. We started with forecasting as just educated guessing, but saw how it's fundamental for business decisions, using Gadget Central as our example. We look at different time horizons, how the product life cycle changes everything, the different types of forecasts beyond just sales.
Right, the economic and technological one.
7 steps, the key realities like forecasts rarely being perfect, and that aggregation often improves accuracy. Then we dove into the methods qualitative, relying on judgment.
Like Delphi or Salesforce composite.
And quantitative, using data. We unpack time series components trend, seasonal, cyclical, random, and specific techniques like naive, moving averages, exponential smoothing, and even got into associative models like regression with R-squared.
And importantly, how to measure error with things like MADI and MAPE and monitor bias using the tracking signal.
Exactly. And we finished by touching on the unique challenges in the service sector.
It's a broad field, but hopefully we've hit the key fundamentals.
Definitely. You know, you've learned about all these sophisticated models, expert panels, tracking signals, but like you said right at the start, and the document emphasizes, at its core, it's still educated guessing.
It is. Improving the educated part is the goal.
Which leaves me with a final thought for you, the listener. How can you apply these principles we talked about today? Thinking about the purpose, gathering the info you have, picking a method, even if it's just intuition, and then checking if your guess was good. How can you use that to make better educated guesses in your own life?
Yeah, whether it's planning a project, figuring out a budget, even just planning your week.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How can we all become better forecasters of our own personal futures? Something to think about.